row spacing is a very, very basic component of the cropping system. But because we have a cotton and peanut strong industry in Alabama, so corn and soybeans, they tend to use the same planter as cotton and peanuts. So we have a lot of 30, 36, 38 inches row spacing for corn. And I have developed some data showing that there is a very good difference in yield if we narrow this row spacing a little bit.
Welcome to the Crop Science Podcast Show. My name is Brian Arnell, and I'm coming to you from Oklahoma State University. And this show is brought to you on behalf of Wisentex. Today, I'm happy to have on with us Dr. Eros Francisco. Eros is an assistant professor and grain crop specialist at Auburn. And Eros has a fun or an interesting path to academia at Auburn, where a few years ago he was working with IPNI, International Plant Nutrition Institute, as the Deputy Director, Midwest Brazil. This is where I first came across Eros with my interaction with IPNI. In fact, I believe the first time I met Eros was in Brazil. He's now at Auburn, assistant professor and an extension specialist. Eros, welcome to the Crop Science Podcast. And first, tell us a little bit about how you ended up going from Brazil, ending up in Auburn, and then dropping into some of the work you're doing.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, Brian. It's a pleasure. Well, I'm not new. I can say that I have close to 25 years of agronomy experience. I graduated in 1998 in São Paulo University. And to be honest, the academia is not, I had some experience back in Brazil. Just after I finished my PhD, I got a position with the Federal University of Mato Grosso. And that was as an adjunct professor. And that was temporary, only 2 years. And then MT Foundation, which is a well-known research foundation in the Midwest of Brazil, offered me to join them. And I did. And that was a great experience. I developed a lot of research experience. And I got to know more about soil fertility and plant nutrition. I have a master in plant science and a PhD in soil science, so I can navigate through different avenues. So I worked with MT Foundation for some time, and then I joined IPNI in 2012, and until IPNI shut down in 2019. That was an amazing experience, a very, very good group of scientists throughout the world, pushing hard on plant nutrition and soil fertility management. And then after IPNI shut down in 2019, I decided to start a solo as a crop consultant. And I did that for a couple of years in Brazil, but my head was trying to decide what was best to my family. So I went and I decided to apply for some positions in the U.S. I got invited by Yara to join as a corn global specialist, and I did have some offers on the table, and so Auburn University was one of them, and I weighed the decision, and I thought coming to Alabama was good for my family and for my development, and I really like extension. IPNI was very heavy on extension and research, so I feel like I'm in IPNI from that perspective, although the environment is completely different than Midwest Brazil.
Yeah.
But the summer is hot as well, at least.
Explore the future of agriculture with KWS, a global leader in innovation and sustainable farming practices. Uncover the exceptional qualities of our hybrid rye, cultivating a legacy for a greener tomorrow. Visit kws.com/US for more information and for dealer locations. KWS, seeding the future since 1856.
So that's fantastic. And Eros, I was more than thrilled to see you land at Auburn.
Thank you.
I was in a way brought up in the IPNI community. My now a research partner, Dr. Steve Phillips. He was IPNI, and he was part, and he was always my mentor. So from the time I was a graduate student, I was involved in IPNI, and I knew everybody in the U.S. and quickly grew to know most of the international group. But I always looked up at IPNI, and you were one of them that I always enjoyed visiting with, and just following your ability to communicate with producers was something I always looked up to. And to see you be able to land in an extension role was really exciting for me. Because a lot of them, like you said, you had opportunity for industry, but you were able to choose, even better yet, extension. So why, just briefly, why the choice of Auburn from Brazil in the U.S., and then what really are you doing now? What's the work that your project is now carrying on at Auburn?
Okay, so why choosing Auburn? Well, I did apply to other universities. I applied for the University of Florida. I'm not going to mention every. I tried eight or 10 positions, but I found out that it's really about the match of your expertise, your career experience, and the position itself. So I did apply to another position in Auburn in 2019, just after IPNI shut down, as a cotton specialist. But I was so glad another professor got that position, because he's a great partner. He's a very good agronomist. And then this grain crop position showed up, and I decided to reapply to Auburn. I was just a fun comment. I really enjoyed that Steve Phillips decided to go to Morocco, because I think he was going to apply for this position. I'll be in trouble. But anyways, Auburn is a great university, that I can tell, and is known for the quality of the research and the faculty. Alabama, I had an experience in Alabama 15 years ago. In 2004 or 5, I was here for part of my PhD. Okay. And I fell in love with Alabama. The weather is great. The people is great. So it was kind of easy to decide to come to Alabama, although it's not one of the most important states in the U.S. regarding agriculture. And I left Mato Grosso, which is the leader in grain production in Brazil,
absolutely,
to Alabama. But the interesting thing is, there's so much, especially in South Alabama, there's so much going on that is similar to what we have in Brazil. So I think my expertise can bring new insights and good perspective for the farmers.
Share with our listeners just briefly a little bit about Alabama crop production, because it has got a lot of unique natures to it. It's got a lot of diversity, and I would imagine that many across the U.S. don't really know just how diverse it can be, the production systems in Alabama.
Yeah, that's correct. Alabama is very, very different from north to south. We have different environments. So let's start with the south. The south, we have the coastal plains type of soils. And then we move to the central part, which is like a Piedmont in the east, and the Black Belt soils in the west. Mm-hmm. And in the north, we still have the Piedmont soils and the Tennessee Valley, which is a completely different environment as compared to even the north region, east and west. And so that brings a lot of opportunities. We have a very strong peanut and cotton industry in Alabama. And I would say those are the main crops the main row crops that we have in Alabama. Soybeans and corn, they are kind of concentrated in the north of the state, but we have fields all over the place in Alabama. Just to have a picture of acreage, we are talking about roughly 400,000 to 500,000 acres of cotton, some couple or 300,000 acres of peanuts, 400,000 acres of soybean, 400,000 acres of corn. So we can't compare to Iowa or Illinois or other states, or even Oklahoma. But it's a growing industry. We have very good farmers. We have very top of the notch farmers and farmers that still need some basic assistance from extension. So it's really an incredible environment to work with because it's not one single way of doing things. It's 10 different ways of seeing agriculture, seeing agronomy put in place, from sandy soils to clay soils, to from very hot weather to mild weather. So it's a challenge from an agronomic perspective, and that's what I like.
So tell us a little bit about what your current project is doing. What's some of the research and extension projects that you're working on right now, Eros?
Okay. So my position is grain crops. So I kind of had to work with soybeans, corn, basically, which are the most important grain crops. Some wheat, and I forgot to say 100,000 acres of wheat, and sorghum. So I try to focus my activities on soybean, corn the most, and then wheat and some sorghum, because sorghum is still a very minor crop in Alabama. So, and as a grain crop agronomics specialist, I try to focus on basic stuff and try to go a little bit deeper on some issues that I think and I see that farmers have a challenge with. For instance, row spacing is a very, very basic component of the cropping system. But because we have a cotton and peanut strong industry in Alabama, so corn and soybeans, they tend to use the same planter as cotton and peanuts. So we have a lot of 30, 36, 38 inches row spacing for corn. And I have developed some data showing that there is a very good difference in yield if we narrow this row spacing a little bit. So I've been working on this. I've been working on nitrogen management for corn, which is not a new matter, but I've noticed that some of the farmers, they tend to delay a little bit nitrogen management in corn. So I've developed data to kind of put that a little bit more towards the planting and V6 stage. And we had very good data showing the difference. I have another project regarding seed quality, and the focus is soybeans, and we have measured in 51 different commercial fields, and we monitor the variation or the variability across plants. And the other day, I had the chance to listen to a Alex Harrow presentation. Alex Harrow is the new soybean world record farmer out of Georgia. And he said something that was kind of a punch in my stomach, but then I digested the information, and he's really right, and his comment matches with this data that we have developed last year about singulation being important for soybeans as well. We tend to look at singulation only for corn, but it does matter for soybean as well. So I thought that was a very interesting comment that he made. I have projects focusing on developing the yield impact related to late planting or lower plant population for corn and soybeans, trying to come up with the numbers to help farmers deciding whether or not to replant fields. I have some other activities regarding soil fertility, and mostly with sulfur. Sulfur is the nutrient nowadays that is drawing attention because we're not putting too much sulfur in the air with the new technology regarding gasoline and diesel. So we have seen a very good yield response with sulfur last year because we had a very mild spring, and perhaps the mineralization was very slow in the beginning. So year after year, we may be able to look more about sulfur for crops. So I'm kind of everywhere regarding agronomics. I still need to get get my focus on one topic and kind of master it across the state. And I think I'm going to be putting some more focus on row spacing, because we had a very good yield response regarding narrowing the row spacing for corn.
So what row spacing are you on?
Okay, in North Alabama, it's about 30 inches because of cotton, and cotton is the main driven crop over there. So everyone else is 30. We have farmers with 18 or 20 inches, but 30 is predominant. In the South, it is more towards 36 or 38. So that's a very wide row spacing, and putting 32,000 plants with that kind of row spacing, you pack your row with plants, and that generates a lot of competition among plants. So we try to distribute the plants a little better, and we are trying to understand a little more about the smart corn technology as well. So this is coming into market, and we need to be ahead of information.
Row spacing to me is always intriguing. I don't think our Corn Belt friends understand, because I'm also in peanut cotton country. So, depending on which county or region I'm in, my row spacing is 30 or 40, 38, 36, 32, or 30. Because of the peanut or the cotton or the bedded cotton ground. And it's always interesting because traditional land would either be cotton land or peanut land. And what they've done, and I'm sure it's similar in Alabama, is in the traditional cotton, they bring in corn, or in the traditional peanut, they bring in corn. Who wants to buy a new planter, especially nowadays? So we just run, we run planters on we use the same planter for corn and peanut. And now we have 36-inch row spacing corn. And it's always a challenge on the cotton side to find a cotton picker, or I can't have one cotton picker because I need one that can do 40-inch row spacing, 36-inch row spacing, and 30s. And a lot of the Southeast is similar, that we have all these row spacings.
Yeah, it's not easy to change it because, as you said, it regards planters, combine heads, equipment for different crops. So I'm not saying that it's going to be easy to change it, but at least we, as an extension, we need to show the difference, and we need to inform farmers about this difference. Another thing that I'm taking care of is I'm heading the on-farm variety trials for corn and soybean. So that's another good stuff that I'm being involved to, which is getting to know the varieties, because as I said, I'm here for 2 years, so everything is new to me. So I need to learn the names, the numbers, all the technology behind it, and get to inform farmers about which is which and which is the best varieties for them.
Well, a reminder to our listeners, it's the Crop Science Podcast, and we're on with Dr. Eros Francisco, he's an assistant professor and grain crop specialist at Auburn. Eros, you kind of triggered some of my interest talking about the soybean seed quality and singulation. I'm going to kind of dive into that conversation. We run, at least in Oklahoma, we have a lot of growers that will use air seeders for soybeans. We're in a large wheat region, so air seeders and grain drills are a predominant source, and we put soybeans. So tell a little bit about, you were hearing the conversation, talk about soybean planting and singulation, what you've been seeing in the conversations, because again, I haven't thought about that yet in my region.
Well, the background of it came because I've been looking soybean fields for 20 years or more, and it's hard to find one soybean field that is very similar across the entire field. What we are used to see is a very variable canopy across the field, and what I wanted to measure was the difference across plants, and we collected 10 randomized points and 10 plants in each point, and we measured number of branches, number of pods. We trashed individually the plants, and we measured the seed weight, and we got variations like 3 grams versus 25 grams.
Yeah.
So it is a huge variation. And I'm sorry to bring that up again, but Alex Harold, he points something very important for farmers about seeding depth, which is very important across the 20 or 24 rows you have in your planter. Check them all, check them frequently, twice a day, 3 times a day. Don't waste your money in something that you don't know what's happening. Another thing that he pointed out was about the speed. He said that he only plants at the maximum of 4.4 miles per hour. I know this is very slow, and we have technology, as you said, for more speed across planting. But the thing is, if you want to have a 2 plants or 200 something thousand plants, very similar to each other, everyone needs to be at the same seeding depth, emerging at the same time, and not creating variability across them. That's one component. The other component is seed quality, and we have a project. I have a PhD student working on that, and we are aging the seed. We have a very good seed quality to start with, and then we age the seeds to different points, and we run germination and vigor. So we created 3 levels of vigor, and from a very good to a poor vigor. And we are trying to study these across soil depth, seed depth, and soil moisture, because those are the 2 components that bring a lot of difficulties for seed emergence in reality. So it's the seed depth and soil moisture. And one thing that I would like to have in the future was a very well designed understanding of how much soil moisture impact on the speed of germination and emergence, and how much soil seed depth also affects that. I think about creating a logarithm just to interpret soil as you go across the field, and perhaps talk to the planter and say, okay, we need to lower the seeding rate, or put it more deeper, or stop planting, even if we have a soil moisture that is not well for the planting, not good for the planting. So I think this is something that we need to understand more, because our cropping system is go, 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 go very fast.
Yes.
I have generated some data showing that if you delay a little bit your planting date, not too much, you are still good regarding yield. So we don't need to be in a hurry all the time. I think we need to take a very good pace and put the seeds right on the target that we want.
Yeah, the variable depth is something that I've looked at mechanically often in Oklahoma with you're also a lot of rain fed or dry land production. That variable moisture or depth to moisture across a quarter section, or even across a 40-acre field, you may be able to find moisture at half an inch deep, or it might be an inch or 2 deep. And so how can we develop technology that can not just sense the moisture of where you're at, but understand where to go? And so the same thing we consider in Oklahoma, do we plant to depth, or do we bring it up? And we call it dusting in, right, Eros? So
Yes.
you put the seed in the dry, because the worst thing we could have is put the seed just at the edge of moisture to get it to germinate, and then run out of moisture, because then you have seedling depth. So we may dust in a crop where it ensures that we have a rainfall event that is able to then germinate the seed, that the seed doesn't germinate and then run out of moisture. But variability and depth to moisture is something that I do believe in my environment also causes significant amount of variance across stand and viability.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not saying that this is easy to define and to understand, but we need to study. We need to see and understand possibilities. Where should we go from from understanding more about seed germination and seed emergence. But we have the technology, as you said. We can today, if we can integrate the planter with a software and a sensor measuring the moisture, we can tell the planter to go deeper and shallower across, I don't know, 10 feet, 15 feet as a response interval. I don't know. We need to work with that. We need to play with this and try to understand if we can have a better singulation and a better emergence across the field.
So in the singulation, is it getting back to reducing inter-row competition where you don't want two seeds too close to each other?
That's right. Yeah, we need to think about that in soybean as well.
No.
Especially with the wide row spacing. I've visited soybean fields in South Alabama because they plant 38 due to cotton or peanuts, and they plant 140,000 seeds per acre. When you have a 38-inch row spacing, it's really
you're packed in there.
Yeah, you're packed in. So you were prohibiting the plants to express their capability of branching and putting out a very big number of pods. So I think we need to consider that and narrow the row spacing a little bit and take some plants out of the row in order to allow the varieties to grow a little bit more. So that's something we need to develop more information on.
So if you were to look and, you've been now in Alabama for about 2 years, what are you noticing as maybe, I'll take this in two ways. So the first way, what are you noticing as maybe low-hanging fruit from what you're bringing up from Mato Grosso, a significant production region? Is there some things that you see as you've been on the ground for 2 years that you would say, Alabama farmers, here's some low-hanging fruit where they get, low cost of initiation, but maybe great return? Have you noticed anything in your region?
Yes. Well, I got this question very often. Well, how do you compare Brazilian farmers with American farmers? That's a very typical question for me from farmers. And what I feel is, back in the tropical environment, we deal with a lot of pressure on diseases, insects, soil fertility. And I think we struggle fighting those challenges. And what I see from a perspective of a farmer mentality is a Brazilian farmer, is open to try new stuff, new technologies, new ways of doing the same thing, because he needs to fight hard to overcome those challenges. I'm not saying that American farmers have an easy job. No, it's hard to bring money out of the ground doing agriculture. We here in the U.S. we have all the technologies that we need to make a good crop. I think the low-hanging fruits, as you asked, is or may be two components. I think we need to, and please, this is Alabama perspective. This is not this is not across all states. This from my Alabama experience is I think we have a very good environment for growing more biomass, especially as forages. And in the South, and I don't see the integration with cattle and grain production as we have in Brazil. In Brazil, we still have some challenges regarding that, but it's very common. Everywhere you go, you're going to see a farmer trying to integrate cattle and grains. I think we have a very good scenario for Alabama because of the heat in the South and the moisture, that we can integrate more cattle and grains. I think this is a very low-hanging fruit that is there, and I'd like to see, and I'd like to work with anyone trying to pursue that.
Well, Eros, I mean, I'll build on for 2 points. I am an American dealing with American farmers all my life, and I'll tell you that as a whole, that when I travel, the Brazilian farmers I worked with tended to be more willing to adopt new technology. than some of the American. Not all of them, but there is that there's this willingness to try new and to develop. But going back, I'm really intrigued and excited about what you're saying. So in Oklahoma, we are a cattle state first and crop second. So you almost expect to see cattle on sorghum stalks or cattle on corn stalks, or when we bring a new crop into the state, like canola, when we brought winter canola in years ago, the first question wasn't how will it yield. The first question, can we graze it and then take grain? And so the integration of livestock into a cropping system, we can talk about all the soil health, all sustainability, but there's a lot of value, even economic sustainability, diversification of where you're putting your money. And so I think it's fascinating. I would agree that Southeast, whether you're Alabama, Georgia, any of those regions, should have some significant opportunity to integrate, because you do also have large cattle sectors and large goat and sheep sectors. So it's not that you're absent of the livestock. You have just tended to remove the livestock from the crop region, and you have the pasture and you have crop, and they don't integrate as much as they used to.
And I drive all over the state, and I see very good cattle farms next to a very good row crop farm. And I think to myself, why they are not working together? And that's very common in Brazil nowadays. We're not saying that a farmer needs to put a lot of money into cattle, because that's a big chunk of money. But you can partner with your neighbor, and both of them are going to benefit from having grains in your soil or have cattle in your soil. So I think this is something that is very low hanging fruit for Alabama.
That's fun. We do a lot of double crop in Oklahoma, where we take our wheat out, of course, and then plant immediately in the summer, double crop. And there's an inherent risk of having a bad summer, having a drought, and the double crop not making. However, every farmer who has double crop also has in the back of their head, if my double crop doesn't make it grain wise, I can graze it or I can bale it. And so it's intriguing in that we are a cattle state. Oklahoma is a oil and cattle first, crop and forestry second. And so we're forced that way, but it's fascinating. Well, Eros, we're coming up on our time, and I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I've got the 3 questions. Well, before I get to my 3 questions, are any other projects you would like to share with our listeners before we move on?
I forgot to mention that I do have a project on corn, intercropping a legume not intercropping, but growing a legume in the winter and trying to check the residual nitrogen for corn. And we could see a 25 to 30 pounds of nitrogen per acre benefit coming from crimson clover for corn the next year. And we are just started, because I'm part of this very good group of soybean specialists that's named Science for Success. You may be aware of this. So we just, the group was granted some funds to study nitrogen credits from soybeans, and we are targeting corn as a beneficiary of this nitrogen from soybeans. The goal is to study how much nitrogen can we assess from soybeans to the next crop. And it's going to be interesting, because we have states in this fund from the North region, the Midwest, and the South. So hopefully we're gonna have very good numbers to share.
That's definitely much needed research, and I'm glad to see a multi-state approach. And so
it's time for our famous 3.
As we move on, Eros, what is your go-to work resource? What do you go to when you have questions about anything?
I usually go to someone more smart or smarter than me. So another specialist that may be dealing with the same environment, the same challenges as me. So I I tend to connect with different professionals in the region, or I go and search online or go to a textbook and try to find information. And I can say that I've been very happy to easily find information and in a fast way as well. So network is great, not just to get you known throughout the region, but also to share information on work, basically.
Fantastic. And next, what is your favorite leisurely activity? What do you do when you're not working?
Well, it's been hard to do something out of work, but I usually I like fishing. So in the summer, I go with my kids and I try to fish a little bit. I would like to hunt. I've never hunted, so I'd like to go hunting sometime. But fishing for me is very relaxing, and I really enjoy fishing.
What's your favorite species to target in Alabama?
Yeah, well, so far I have not been able to catch a variety of fishes, but the bass is the best one, right? So the bass is a very good to catch. So
Great fight.
Yeah, it fights a lot.
And you're in Alabama. I know a few of your farmers, your producers that you work with hunt. So you should be leaning on those folks.
That's right. I have been invited, but I couldn't go.
Finally, Eros, if somebody wants to find out more about what you are doing, your research and extension program, where are some good places they can go to find out more about it?
Well, I think the first channel would be the ACES website. ACES is the Alabama Cooperative Extension System. We have all the publications there. In a daily basis, Twitter or X nowadays. I'm very active. I try to be active in LinkedIn, although LinkedIn is more towards professional activities, but Twitter is my main channel nowadays, or X. It's hard to not say Twitter.
I know. I still say it too, Eros. Well, I want to thank you again. This is Dr. Eros Francisco. He is assistant professor and grain crop specialist with Auburn University that's taken his time today to be with us. And folks, if you liked what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button so you get notifications when we're releasing a new podcast on the Crop Science Podcast. Share the video if you've learned something, or even if you haven't, but just hit up your friends and let them know that we are doing this podcast. And of course, leave us a comment if you want. If you have any comments, any suggestions, we're always looking for new guests to bring on. With that, Eros, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Brian. It was my pleasure.